I was like, wow, this guy is amazing. But I didn't tell him that. If you're afraid of dogs, don't come to my office.
Oh my God, to buy a house is so easy and smooth. Let's buy another one.
There is no avoiding paying taxes,
Correct.
right? The taxes have to be paid. I'm sorry, attorneys, but I love you. But when you're
Sometimes
there,
we don't need you.
sometimes we don't need you. You know, when we need you, we call you.
Well, today we're shooting the first podcast, and my name is Yulia Skurikhina, and I'm the realtor at Julie's Realty. And today, of course, I have Julie as a first guest, because I've been at Julie's Realty for the last 2 years, and that was a big shift for me. It was the most important shift for me. So that's the person who I definitely want to break the ice with.
Awesome. I feel very special. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, and actually, me and Julie met in a karaoke, I think that was.
Yeah, YPN.
Like, was it YPN? Yep.
Yeah. In Gulfstream.
Yep. That's why the networking is important, and
Yeah.
the party is also important. So, I think it was like way before COVID.
Yeah, I think it was like 5 years ago or something like that, or maybe 4
probably
years ago.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
I just stepped in as a brokerage for a little bit before that. But yeah, so we met during the YPN. It was Gulfstream karaoke. And I went to your brokerage actually to sign the papers. And then yeah.
And then something happened.
Something happened. I did a little reroute for a year. But I got
That's
back
okay.
home. I got back home. So, and now you own Julie's Realty.
Yes.
You're the producing broker.
Yes.
You also own the New World Title South.
Correct.
Was a title company.
Yes.
And you just opened the True Blue Lending.
That is correct.
So you cover all three bases.
Yes, we're just missing the insurance, but that's coming soon. So
How soon?
it's in the works. We're working on it.
And how long have you had Julie's?
So Julie's has been active since 2007.
So that's 15 years this year.
Yes.
How many agents?
We have 160 agents and we're growing. So we're very excited. And we have amazing agents like yourself that are part of the family, right? And that makes us who we are in the industry. So I'm very proud of that. And although it's my name for the brokerage, I feel like, you know, everybody is part of the family and that they're an extension of myself. And so the representation that we have within the brokerage is really important to continue that reputation that I have going with my name. So I feel like I hold my company to a whole other standard just because it's my name behind it.
Well, and it's actually when I go do some showings, and it happened multiple times, it was so funny because people like, oh, you're from Julie's. And because, you know, like when you say wherever, like, I don't know, Compass, Kellers Williams or anything like that, it's just like a big corporation. So it doesn't have like a soul behind it.
Right.
It doesn't have like that, a person who you can count accountable, I guess, or like a specific reputation, because it's just the agents,
or you can relate to a certain
correct. And that's what I feel a lot. It's like your name speaks in the industry. It's like people know when they had business, they definitely had a great experience, they know that you're gonna stay for them. And for me, that actually was the most important point, probably, is I knew that you're definitely gonna be there for me if I ever need anything, because, you know, deal sometimes goes south, and we have to figure out
a solution.
Very often.
And sometimes it takes more than one person.
And sometimes it's a 9 p.m. solution on the day before closing.
Yeah.
So, but today I actually wanted to just cover like some topics about the brokerages, but mainly probably about title.
Okay.
Because I feel like title is one of those, you know, subjects which people just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Everyone think that there is a realtor who just show the houses and that's where the job ends.
Yeah.
And then there is a bank which doing everything else.
Yeah.
And that's about it. But nobody really knows who is title, what they do, how important are those people, and how to choose the right one, how to read the closing statements, how to understand what you're paying for.
Correct.
And all that. And why at first place did you decide to go to a title agency?
So
doesn't
obviously
seem like a fun industry.
It's actually very fun for me. I actually like it. And so me as a broker, right, it's very important to understand all the different facets of the real estate transaction, and not just on the surface. I like to dig deep. And so I was always very much involved whenever it came to any portion of the real estate transaction, so I can understand it, so I can step in at any cycle of the transaction and help out. So title was one of those that was something that interested me all the time. And so I had an opportunity, because I was always doing business with New World Title for a very long time. They've been a very reputable company in the industry for quite some time now. And so I know one of the owners, and he gave me the opportunity to team up with him and open up my own branch, which is New World Title South. And so the title portion of the business is something, like I said, may not be fun for everybody. They may not understand it because they just never really thought about it. But when you do get involved and you understand what it takes to actually start a transaction from start to finish, and understanding all the paperwork that's behind it, it's a huge responsibility, because when you're purchasing a property, you're basically wanting to purchase something that has clear title, right? Correct. Because when you go to resell the property, you want to make sure
what matters. Everything else you can fix.
Right. When you go to resell the property, you want to make sure that you're going to be able to sell it. Well, guess what? If you don't have clear title at that time, then all your most valuable asset that you may own in your entire life
has zero value.
It
might be a liability.
So that's something that's very, very important. And I hope that nobody ever has to go through that, right, to fight for their biggest asset that they own. But if they do have to, and they have a title company that backed them up, that issued them an owner's policy, that's something that will go to protect them for the life of the ownership. I mean, and the title insurance industry has been around for 125 years. So this is not something that just started, and it's not a fad.
Well,
it's here to stay.
Let's talk about, since you mentioned title insurance.
Yeah.
What is title insurance? Because this definitely the majority of people, and even some of the realtors, don't know.
So title insurance is something that protects your interest as an owner, right? So it's not for future loss, like property insurance is for future loss, right? But actual owner's title policy and lender's policies, they're for previous, right? It's for previous filings. So if when you go to purchase a property, a title company may have missed something, or it wasn't part of the public records, and then couple years later down the line, somebody's knocking down your door and they were like, hey, I own this property. And then you're like, no, I own this property, and I have a title policy that says that I do, and I've complied with all of my requirements. Well, now you're basically going to go to your underwriter. They're going to go ahead and assign you an attorney that's basically going to fight for you and make sure that your ownership interest is protected. So basically anything in the past that could have happened, that may have been missed because it wasn't recorded properly or something like that, you have a title policy that will protect you. And it's a one-time payment that you make when you purchase a property.
And so that's the only time when you can purchase it. It's during the closing.
Correct.
You cannot come a week after and say, hey, I want to have a title policy.
I mean, you can, but they will need to do the searches and everything like that, and you will need to pay the premium. So you can purchase the property, but there will be a fee that you need to pay, which is fine. But again, it's better to be done at that time, because if there was a time that you own, from the time that you own the property until the time that you decide to purchase, there's something that could come up, you're not going to be protected because it's not going to be included in your policy. So that's why it really is important to get that done right at the time when you're purchasing the property, so that you can avoid all of that possible, liability that could happen from the time that you purchase it to the time that you decide to get the policy.
And we had issue actually one time. I was selling this townhouse. It was in the Pembroke Pines, and the townhouse was great. Everything went great. Inspection went through. There was like no liens on the property, nothing. But then we find out that there was one signature missing from like 1988. It was like about 30 years, ago. And my title company said we cannot close because we need to have that resolved. And the person who sold it back then died. The person who bought it that time also didn't exist. So, and now the only option was going to probate court and to wait for them to clear it. And it all happened because the last seller purchased cash. So he didn't have any lenders who require him to have title insurance. And I guess he was not advised that he better have one. Yeah. And we were in the situation when the seller wanted to sell, the buyer wanted to buy, but we couldn't.
Exactly.
And
those situations happen a lot, unfortunately. And so some people are willing to take the risk because they're like, okay, well, I don't want to pay this fee and I'm willing to take the risk. As long as you know what risk you're taking and that's a decision that you make, I mean, that's up to you, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I feel like if people really understand what the policy does and how it protects you, I feel like that's a risk that you shouldn't take. It's just not worth it.
Correct.
When we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of an asset that you want to go and sell in the future, it could be a deed that wasn't signed correctly. Now the deed was invalidated, and again, if you didn't have that title policy, you're going to have to hire attorneys and you're going to have to pay for all of those fees. And I promise you, it's going to cost a lot more than your owner's policy and your time, right? Because now you're going to be fully involved and responsible in resolving that issue. So I just feel like it's a one-time fee that you pay. It covers your asset. So it's a promulgated amount. That's another thing that I want to make sure that we cover, because a lot of people think that they can go from title company to title company to shop around for the title insurance. And fortunately, it's a promulgated amount that is regulated by the state, which means that it cannot vary from title company to title company. So it's based on a particular calculation. So you can Google it. There's calculators, but it's it goes based on a dollar value. So anything up to 100,000 is a certain amount, then liability, and then it goes on from there. So basically, it's a calculation that you can always double check by going online and putting in owner's title insurance calculator, and you have tons of different websites that will show you how to calculate it. So talking about the title insurance, it's a fee that really can't be shopped around.
And now, it also, can it be like, like with the taxes when you're playing with a homestead or something like that, and there are different deduction, is there any option to decrease that title insurance?
So there are a few things that you can do depending on your ownership and the time. So like if you have owned, let's say you're going to go sell your property and you've owned it for 2 years, when you go to resell that property, if you know what you're doing, right, and the other agent knows what they're doing and knows, yes, you actually can get a credit up to, so as long as you haven't owned it for more than 3 years, you actually can provide a copy of your owner's policy to the new buyer, and they can get a credit of up to 30% on their owner's title insurance. That's a hefty savings. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know that you can do that. And there are title companies, it's not that they're doing it intentionally, it's just that they don't realize it either. They don't look at the history of how long that previous owner has sold it. So it really is the responsibility, and should be the responsibility of the people involved in the transaction from the beginning.
It's a realtor's responsibility. It's a realtor's knowledge when it comes to that.
I agree. And so that's where a professional realtor is very important, right? A professional realtor. And when I say a professional realtor, it could be a professional realtor from day one once they got licensed, right? Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with how many years they've been in the business. It's a professional realtor is responsible for aligning themselves with a professional broker so that if they do have any questions that they don't know, they can right. And so they have that person that they can piggyback off of for the knowledge, right? And for the purpose of saving the time. But anyways, going back to the credit. So that's very, very important. Another thing too, there's people that will refinance their properties, right? Especially now, the interest rates are a little bit higher. When the rates start going down, people want to take advantage of the lower interest rates. Well, guess what? You actually get a reissue credit as well for your title insurance once you go to refinance your lender's policy.
So pretty much with a refinance, because it's considering being like a new closing.
Yeah.
So if you don't... if you own the property for more than 3 years, you're going to pay the title insurance from the beginning? No.
So for the life of your ownership. So if the ownership has stayed the same and you're refinancing the property, you can utilize your same policy. There is no time restriction if you're refinancing. The only time restriction that you have is when you're reselling the property, which is 3 years.
So how do you get credit when you refinance then?
So you provide copies of your title insurance to the title company that's going to be doing.
If you don't provide it, then they're going to ask you to.
Yes, I mean, and there's ways. Sometimes people don't get copies of their title policies, right?
Because I don't think they get recorded right away. So that's based on the title company. Like they have the policy, which the person walking away, but it's not realistically filed?
Correct. So basically, it's a title commitment first, right? Once the transaction closes, then the title company, part of their post-closing department is they issue an actual title insurance policy,
Which comes by mail.
that usually comes by mail along with your original recorded warranty deed. So those are very two important documents that you should keep handy. Scan it. Sometimes you can ask the title company, hey, can you send me a copy of the documents via email? Have them in an electronic way, put them on a Google Drive, put them somewhere on a cloud, so that way you can always access those documents. But yeah, so you need to have those policies. If you don't have those policies, you can always contact the title company that did the closing, and you can ask them to provide you with the copies, because they will always have those on file. That's something that title companies do. They have documents on record.
What if the title company is out of business?
Well, so remember, title company is a middle person, right?
Correct.
The title company is not. And we're here to stay. We're here to stay.
You guys have a name already in the industry, and it's been years, and it's been many offices.
Yes, so I want to make that clear. But let's say, God forbid, the title company they dealt with is no longer in business. That's okay, because most of the title, again, I haven't seen a title insurance underwriter go out of business,
because
right?
And that's for 125 years.
Yes,
kind of a long
it's
industry.
been a very long industry, and
good
it's
money.
been it's good money, absolutely, but they're serving their purpose, right? And so as long as you have copies of the documents, you know who was the underwriter of that file, so you can just call them directly and just tell them, hey, this is you usually will have a title commitment number, and then you can utilize that in order to ask for their policy, and then it will, within a couple of days, they usually send it to you. I've done that for some of the clients that couldn't find their policies, but I knew that they were due a credit. And so obviously we will do whatever we can to make sure that the clients can save money, and we will do the extra legwork of trying to obtain the documents that they may no longer have. And we've had title companies that have closed doors for whatever reason. They were in there for when the market was hot, and then they just didn't want to do continue and shift with the market, and that's fine. Everybody.
We always lose realtors and title companies and lenders.
Listen, it's a cycle. It's a cycle. Okay. Yeah.
We're here to stay.
We're here to stay. You guys can go, but we're here to stay.
So the main reason, like the main suggestion for any realtor, is look up if the property was sold within the last 3 years.
Correct.
So fight for that credit for your buyer.
Yes.
And then for the owners, make sure you keep those documents.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Make sure you know who is your underwriter, just in case everyone left you out of business and you still need to find and
Correct.
whatever,
Yes.
to pick a fight.
And if you work with a title company that, is looking out for your best interest, you know what I mean?
Tell you.
They will tell you. They will find a way to also find a solution. So, and that's where, for me, customer service is like the number one thing. And I think one of the questions from the beginning is like, why did I go into that business? Was, and I'll go back to that to answer it. Basically, I wanted to make sure that the transaction usually finishes with the title company. And so I wanted that to be the most memorable experience, and to be able to control it, and to be able to have some sort of influence in that. I wanted to be a part of that. And I felt like the only way I can do that is if I actually have my own title company. And so therefore I set my own standards, right? And so I've had the privilege of working with a lot of great title companies, and that they have done a great job, but there's always been like this little sauce that's been missing. That's like my little sauce that I wanted to put in. And so that's how, kind of like I said, you know what, I'm gonna do this. We're gonna do the title company, although I'm a producing broker, I do well for myself. So, but this business really was an arm to extend the interaction with the client and the realtor, and the experience overall with the client, right? The seller, the buyer, the realtor, and allows me to expand my circle of influence in the industry overall. And so having that impact, having that ability to impact how a transaction ends, and putting my little sauce was something that was very important. And so I'm very excited. Obviously, it's an evolving company. We've been in business for 2 years now, going on the third, as a branch owner. And I've learned a lot. I mean, I've gone to take the classes to be, a title insurance agent. Again, embracing myself fully and understanding the whole process. I've actually worked in the title company for a couple of months just because I wanted to understand everything from the intake, from the processing, from the post-closing to the closing, and having that interaction and putting the systems in place that I wanted to have. So it was really interesting. And that's where I really got to understand even more so, because I thought I was involved with the title, right? Because I told you I want to be involved in every aspect of the real estate transaction, but then actually working in the title company.
That's when you know what they actually do.
Yes.
Day to day.
And it's a lot, and I know that from the realtor perspective, we sometimes don't think that it's a lot.
Sometimes a little not as grateful as we should be.
Yes, but it's understandably so, because you guys are not...
we're fighting for our transaction and...
Right, but you're not there in the office to understand the minute little things that add up to a lot of time-consuming things that have to be done as part of a real estate transaction. So there's a lot of moving parts, and that, realtors don't necessarily need to be a part of every part of that.
That was my next thought.
Yeah.
Because, like I had experienced completely different journeys with the different title companies, and some of them I had to literally, because sometimes you choose as a title, right? Sometimes you don't. And I feel like that control, of course, everyone wants it to know who is leading your deal. But there was situations when I had to drive to a Kendall, because the title company were not responding,
right?
And we were not the one who chose it, and I had to drive there to make sure we're okay, because it didn't respond to emails, it didn't respond, they didn't respond.
Been
to
there,
phones.
done that. Yeah,
I had the attorneys who was still in the deals from my title company when I had, when we chose, and then the buyer just decided to go just with some attorney because they're just an attorney,
right?
And then attorney goes on the vacation, and then his assistant is whatever moody,
right?
And you just have to find a way, to find those people and to make sure we're closing. So I don't remember where I was going with that.
No, to understand every process of the transaction.
So yeah, that's where I was going. So the title companies, I love when I believe that every professional should be doing their job.
Yes.
Like, I want to work with a full trust, knowing that they know what they're doing. I don't need to micromanage them.
Correct.
I don't need to manage them. There's a deadline and a contract. Everyone know about it.
Yeah.
I just want to have a phone call before, the deadline is over to make sure that everything is done. That, I got used to this treatment almost from day one.
Right.
My real estate career, that I was always informed by the title agent. Is there something we need to worry? If something come up
ahead of time.
So if something comes up,
right?
Yeah, I know that I still have tons of time to fix it.
Correct.
So my clients' money are never on a line,
right?
And that we all, because transaction, it's a win-win-win-win
right
situation. It's never you taken away from somebody to gain something.
Right.
It's always everyone should be gaining, in my opinion. And I feel like some title companies, they understand the concept that they just have to lead it to make sure that we all there for a successful closing.
And so the communication part is something that is, I think, important in life, right? Forget about just business. I think personal relationships, friendships, business, I think clear communication is very, very important. So, one of the things that we have that I have instilled in my office and my staff in my branch is that we want to have a weekly update. Yep. Every single week.
And I love those.
Every Tuesday, they're sending an update to every single person that's involved in the transaction, letting them know, hey, these are the aspects of this transaction. This is what we've received. This is what we're pending. This is what we're working on, so that everybody knows what is going on
those documents, when they say lien search, requested due
ETA,
by. Yeah,
right.
Questionary, requested due by. For me, this is that's it, because then it goes into my calendar. I know when to follow up. I know when my assistant need to follow up. And we all know that we're following the deadlines.
Yes,
because once it's beyond the deadline, that's we know when
that's when it's a problem. Yes. And the title company is really to facilitate the transaction here and to make it flow and to make it easy for everybody, right? We're not here to make your job harder. We're not here to give you tasks to do.
Correct.
But I feel like we are here to communicate every step of the way, just letting you know, hey, this is what's in the works. This is what's been done. This was what's still pending. And then sometimes we do need your help, hey,
Correct.
Yulia, we've tried to do this. We've tried everything that we could on our end. We really need your help, right? And so that's one of the things that we continue to work through, because again, coming from a broker side, coming from a producer, I know both sides. And so I'm continuously teaching, coaching, the people from my title company about like, hey, we can do this better. Hey, it's always a growing experience. And so that's the other part too. Like, I'm always growing, I'm always learning about myself, and I'm sure you are as well, right? And so, yeah, and that's the exciting part about it. Correct. And I'm like, I feel like with real estate transactions, like every single transaction is so different. You deal with so many different personalities, right? And it's like, that's the part that I love.
Yep. It's first when I started real estate. And before I started with real estate, I had a lot of people who were telling me, oh my God, you need to start selling real estate. And I was like, I don't want to be one of those realtors. Yeah. And then, more people were coming, and I was like, why everyone want me to sell real estate? And they're like, your personality just match, like you're going to be great at it. You're a people person, yeah. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. So many realtors, so many just like people who like uneducated and go there, like don't want to. But then when I was just about to start, I was like, it's all the same. It's just like you keep selling the houses, like what's excited about it? Like where the growth is.
Until I
started, and I was like, oh, growth. Wait a second. Like everyday opportunity.
Yeah.
Every day we have different clients. We have different personality. We like a, personal psychologist. We like matchmakers. We are investments, like we're professional for people to actually make their biggest spend, like the biggest investment in their life. It's a real estate. So
the only I would say for me, right, I always have FOMO because I have like so many people that I become friends with, right? And one of our mottos for Julie's Realty is creating lifelong relationships with all of our clients, and it's like, it's so true. But I'm like, I want to spend time with all of them. They're doing this and they're inviting you to this, and you want to be a part of it, and it's like, I just need more time.
Well, that's why you're doing the baby showers, and then you invite everyone pretty much.
That's true. That is true. Yes.
Let me get pregnant so I can do a baby shower and everyone can come in one room finally to me.
That is true. So yeah, that's the only thing.
Well, I also feel that way because the majority of my clients becoming my friends, which I love. I think this is like literally the best gift. And the majority of them I actually really enjoy and love. You know, like I go to their birthdays, we go into barbecues, the paddleboard, we go to movies, we go to the Art Basel, like we're doing things.
And there are some that can stay as clients.
But listen, there are some which don't want that connection. There are some which they just want you to, like to
and
write
that's
their
okay
contract.
too.
We closed, bye-bye. And and they don't want anything from you. They don't want to be friends with you.
But then you hear from a referral that they've sent you a couple years later, and you were like, oh,
and they didn't even bother, to call you or check on you. They just give you a referral, but you're like, okay, I guess we're still friends.
But those are the different personalities, right? And so you can't take it personal.
I'm okay with that. I don't take it personal. Some people don't like to talk. I do like. Some people don't like to spend time, with the people that know. That's okay by me. They can do them.
Right.
I'm okay with that. So what brought you to the lending part? Because that was a recent add-on. Same.
So it was interesting because I've been approached many, many times to open up a lending company for many years. And it's something that I've just kept kind of brushing off. And I said, you know what? I'm not interested. I have an amazing lender that I work with. He's been amazing to me and all my clients. Like, I'm good. But something happened interesting, and this is where like just certain people come into your life and just light bulb goes off or something triggers where you say, you know what, I want to have a follow-up conversation. And so actually it was with a client. I sold him a property, and he was looking on Zillow, and he's had really bad experience working with other people, and he saw that I sell properties in that particular area where he was interested. So he reached out to me directly, a lender from Colorado and California, and he was like, look, I'm looking to get a second home. Anyways, I end up finding him the property. He really liked the way that I worked because I was able to cover all of the different, go through the different challenges of the transaction and be able to get it done. And he was very impressed. And so I was actually very impressed with him about how he worked his loan process. And without me saying what I liked in a lender, he basically checked off all the boxes, right? And so it was him having a conversation with me afterwards that led to us actually partnering up together and opening up True Blue Lending. So
and that was after you being approached by many lenders and kind of did not want to do
But he proved himself, right, kind of by being my client, and he was representing himself on the lender side, doing the loan, and without me asking to, hey, provide me an update on what's going on with the transaction and your loan status. Everything was like boom, 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 and he kept me in the loop, and he was like very communicative and very nice, and and I was like, wow, this guy is amazing. But I didn't tell him that, and so I didn't tell him that until
they really deserve it.
Right. Until he actually approached me and he was like, look, I really would like to have a conversation. And I did brush him off at first. I was like, look, I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm very loyal to the lender that I have. I'm very loyal person just in general, right? And I'm like, it's not something that I wanted to have a part of my business. But he was like, look, you lose nothing. Let's just have a conversation. And then we had a conversation, and kind of, he went over all the different points and what the goals and aspirations were, and where we can take this company. And I said, you know what? Said, you know what?
Covering it as a corner.
Yeah. I said, you know what? This sounds really interesting. And I said, you know what? I think I owe it to myself. And I think that my other lender will understand, he's
still there.
He's still there. He's absolutely still there. And I was very upfront with him. I was very transparent with him, about my thought process and the approach that I received from Jesse in order to go into partnership. And he said, hey, listen, I don't blame you. If I was in your shoes, I would take it too. And so I said, you know what? I have your blessing. I appreciate it. Obviously, this is somebody that, Tyler, I've been doing business with him for a very long time. He's a dear friend of mine. And I know that if I ever do need his help or I ever need something that he can help me with, I know that he will be there, and vice versa.
And they're both good. I mean, they both great.
Yeah.
And they both great in their own ways. And like, for example, we did want to try to save one deal, which we did. But Jesse was the one who jumped in. So like, he heard that, I'm in trouble because the questionnaire did not came the way we wanted. We ended up having, non-warrantable conduct, which we didn't expect, because another tower in the same community was super solid. And then questionnaire comes back and it's 80% of investors. And we all know when it's 80% of investors, it's not warrantable. And Jesse,
this is where my email came in to help you.
Because we had to, oh my God. So like one of those stories, like I'm even crying. When you feel like that was actually, okay, going back to that story. That client, I know back from the days. And we closed with her in Hollandale, an investment property. We closed with a New World title. And it was so smooth that on a closing day, I never heard that before. On a closing day, she said, oh my God, to buy a house is so easy and smooth. Let's buy another one.
Yeah.
And I said, how serious are you? And she said, I have no money. And I said, okay.
Let's go spend it.
So I was like, okay, same lender, same title, let's just find the right property. But it was hilarious, like how sometimes you just deliver that like beautiful experience. The people just get obsessed with purchasing. Yeah. The people just understand. And we put a tenant right there without even going on the market. Yeah.
So it was perfection.
It was perfection. It was like by the book kind of deal. And then we're going to the second deal. Yeah. Which is, of course, the opposite. It all started great.
Listen, she needed to experience all the different kinds of experiences,
But that deal was also amazing because the listing agent was my first realtor for the first unit I rented under my name in America. So, and I'm like, that's
a small world.
That's exactly like, this is such a small world. Like, you running into the people, like, kind of, that's another lesson of like treating everyone with respect, because like my life proved me so many times that all the people I did good by, they return into my life with like completely, like 10x of, of the things they given to me back. So, and then when I was sending an offer, I was like, wait, Vivian, were you my realtor like in 2012? And she's like, yeah, I didn't know, if you're gonna remember me. Like, how are you? How you been? How is life? And I was like, oh, great. Well, now we're doing the deals together. And it started so smooth. We right away, we knew it's a second property. So we knew that, we're not doing the conventional loan. We knew already what we're dealing with. So we kind of, we literally, we went through all the research with a lender. We knew what we're doing. The only thing we didn't know is the condo going to turn into non-warrantable, because the Azure Tower was absolutely fine. So we had to pretty much ask for extension, either to walk away or ask for extension, which we gained. But then we had an issue, which lender going to actually take it. And that's when Jesse, kind of showed his side to me, because he just overheard me on the phone. And he was like, Yulia, can I gain your business? And I was like, okay.
He's smooth. He's smooth.
But that's how I love all the lenders. All the lenders I'm working with right now, they were here for me first when I needed them.
Well, they're here to provide value,
Correct.
right? And when somebody
was like, I know you're producing. I know that you need a value right now. I am here for you, even though it's a small deal. And he started calling everyone, including the Tylers.
Yeah.
Because like they're the lender themselves.
Right.
And he can still use their product.
Correct.
So, and that's where I think the beauty of the whole networking comes in, and like having a team or having the resources is that you can facilitate pretty much any transactions.
Yeah.
And like the longer you go, the more like if the condo is non-warrantable because like developers suing the HOA or whatever, you go into this lender because this lender until a certain extent they're okay with that.
Right.
Like I have one lender who I give like a very like by the book clean deals just because he's super fast and he can close in 7 days. So I'm like, okay, so like when I have a multiple offers like all last year for the single family and for the townhouse, I knew he's the strongest one just because of the timeline.
Correct.
But
so you have solutions and you have lenders for different types of clients for different kinds of deals.
So how do you feel? I think it's like everyone's question is like, if you have a lending company, and isn't it like a conflict of interest a little bit of representing the client in all 3 areas?
I don't think so. We do give a full disclaimer that we have an affiliated business disclosure with the businesses, so everybody is fully aware, that there is a business relationship between the companies. And so by all means, we say if you want to go shop around and you want to go, and see the difference, by all means, like you are not obligated. You have to remember that in real estate, title, lender, insurance, these are all services that you can shop for. So no realtor or anybody can make you use that type of service. They cannot legally, right? And so I don't feel like we're making them use our services. I feel like we're providing value because I know that we're going to do an extra good job compared to the marketplace. And so I stand by that. And if you find better service somewhere else, then by all means, we need to do a better job here, and then we learn. But, and there's been times you'd be like, hey, and this is where communication comes in. Like, hey, tell me what you didn't like, because now I can go back to my team and we can tweak what needs to be tweaked so that it doesn't happen again. But to answer your question, no, it's definitely not a conflict of interest. It's something that is totally legal. It has to be disclosed. We do disclose it, but we do not make anybody use our services. The services are there because we provide a value, and I know that we provide good customer service and we get the job done.
So talking about that, you mentioned that like none of the realtors can like make you use like a certain lender or certain title. So in a contract, like we as a realtors, when we fill it out, we can choose like if seller is paying for the title, if buyer is paying for the title. There is a provision of like Broward and Miami-Dade provision. And some people think that it's a must. And also the another question is, like sometimes when you go in an MLS, it says seller is going to choose a title. So what's the rules? Because like, for example, when I serve the Palm Beach County, right, it's more, how you say it, customary that the seller is paying for the title. Correct. But in Miami and Broward, because it's like such in a cups letters that like Miami and Broward provision, I feel like all the realtors feel like you have to choose that one.
So you definitely don't have to choose anything. Those are options that can be selected, right? And so it's how you negotiate the offer with the other side. Of course, if it's more customary in Palm Beach to use seller selects title company, you're gonna have a harder time, but I don't think it's impossible. I think that the seller will say, hey, if you want to take on that expense, by all means, it's up to you. So yeah, to answer your question, it is not a requirement to check off one box versus the other. It really is up to the negotiation of the buyer and the seller.
And why they did the provision? Why they did the Miami and Broward provision?
I think it's because it's, again, personally, I think it's because it's customary, that the Miami-Dade and Broward, it's just customary that these specific fees are paid by the buyer and the seller. And so in the contract, it specifies right before those provisions. It actually, if you go on the page before, it will actually specify if you check this box, this is who pays for what, and and it goes down the list. So personally, I've actually had several contracts where although the property was in Miami-Dade and Broward, we had other boxes checked off for whatever reason. And so to answer your question, it is not a requirement.
So what if you see that that the sellers, is it legal for the seller to say, hey, this is attorney, this is a title company, we're going to be closing the deal?
No, they cannot. That's a service that a buyer can shop for. So title, lending, insurance, you cannot make anybody use a specific company. That's a service that the buyer has the right to basically shop for and use whoever they want. And so, but I have seen, and so we report those listings, right?
Okay, so you can report.
Yes. Okay. So when you do see something on the MLS where it's against, the rules and policies and the law, you actually can report the listing, because sometimes, again, people don't know anybody, right? And so you'll run across situations and where it will be an opportunity for you to educate somebody, right? Or provide them information, say, hey, here's information that you should read about, so that way you can educate yourself a little bit better and you can provide better service and not open yourself up to a liability. And that's another thing too.
And that I feel also, talking about that, I noticed for the last 2 years, since we had so many New Yorkers coming in and people from California, they come in with a little different standards, the different used to items, and the majority of them automatically have to have an attorney,
right?
So, and I always advise my people to have an attorney, who specializes
when it's needed.
And what do you think about it? What's the difference?
That's a good subject.
Title company which have an attorney, because I had several title companies which pitched me on do business with me because we have attorney. But realistically, there's a lot of deals which I feel they're so standards that there's there is no complication. It's just it's a homestead property, and realistically, it's so basic, simple, that why would you need to pay extra for the attorney to just review the contract, which the contract is standard contract where you fill out the blanks.
Correct. Yeah. So I agree with you, and I have these discussions a lot, especially in the recent couple of years, right, with all the New Yorkers coming down, because they're a attorney-based state. So all of the real estate transactions, even their contracts, are written by an attorney. So they're just used to that style of work, not understanding that other states operate differently, right? And so this is where it's important to have a conversation with them, educate them. They're not somebody that you can educate, right? They're just very hard-headed, and it's you just got to let them go and do their thing. But at least still have a conversation with them and see, can you explain to them and have them understand? Because I feel our goal is to facilitate a transaction, to make it smooth, to recommend the right people in order to get it to the finish line smoothly. And so sometimes I feel when we do get attorneys involved, and listen, I love attorneys, we need them, right? But not for basic real estate transactions. Correct. And so especially here, since we as realtors write the contracts, we literally are checking off boxes. We need to know what we're checking off, and the client needs to know what they're... In the residential world. The commercial as well, it has, a few extra, aspects to it, but we do have a standard commercial contract that's utilized as well. But with commercial world, yes, you usually do need an attorney, because there's a lot more steps
involved.
Yes, there's a lot more layers involved in facilitating that transaction. But on a residential transaction, it's filling out the blanks. Maybe there are some additional terms that you need to write in because it's specific to that transaction. But as far as having another set of eyes, an attorney reviewing, sometimes because the deal is so basic and they're reviewing the documents, they feel they need to complicate it just to justify their pay, And I'm sorry, attorneys, but I love you. But when you're
sometimes we don't need you.
Sometimes we don't need you. When we need you, we call you. But with our title company, we do have attorneys on staff. So when we do need them, we do contact them. However, for the most part, we get a title commitment. It has your requirements that have to be met. And then sometimes, the seller side is the one really that may need to hire an attorney, because if there's stuff on the requirement side of the title commitment that needs to be cleared that the seller is not able to clear on their own, they may need to hire an attorney, right? And so that's where an attorney comes in. But for the actual buyer side of the transaction, there's really no need for an attorney to be involved, because you are going to pay more money unnecessarily.
I feel like unless you're investor and like you need to open it correctly, like the company, so like you close it in the name of the LLC, for example, or things like that, or if like FIRPTA it's involved.
But you see, that's a different real estate attorney, so there are different.
Correct. Not the one like more to guide you through the taxes.
Correct.
And the structure,
yes,
versus then just let me review your blanks.
Yes, because a real estate attorney is there to facilitate a real estate transaction. They have their trade and their specialty in what they specialize in, right? And so if you want to get that specialized service of like, hey, how is it better for me to structure my company, right, for tax benefits, then you really need to have a CPA and maybe an attorney that specializes in tax law. And so that's going to be for a more complex type of a situation, but that's where you need to, prior to even going under contract, probably have that part figured out,
at least know how you want to structure it.
Or while you're under contract, make sure that you have the assignability clause checked off, so that, because you're buying it in a contract is in a personal name, but that prior to the closing you're going to assign it to an LLC or or a corporation. You need to make sure that you get that confirmed prior to the closing,
which all the contracts I write, I always check the assignability clause without, without removing the liabilities.
Correct.
Because realistically, it doesn't hurt anyone.
Right.
But in a certain point during transaction, we figure out that this is the best way for the buyer. We have that option.
I highly recommend that as well.
I don't even understand why there would be different way.
Right. Exactly.
Why you cannot assign, or like the clause which is like, yes, you can assign and you can release
from liability.
I'm like, what kind of contract is that?
Right.
Like, realistically, it's not even a contract at
Correct.
that point. So yeah, and we did close so many deals in the name of the LLC, because I feel like it's a mandatory if you purchasing it as an investment.
Yeah. And then with FIRPTA too, with FIRPTA,
let's talk about FIRPTA. What is FIRPTA?
So FIRPTA is a foreign national tax, right? And so whenever you have a foreigner that owns a property in their personal name and they're a foreigner, they will be required to have a tax withholding. So that's when
we're saying foreigner, it's somebody who doesn't have a residence, somebody who doesn't have a green card or the U.S. passport.
Correct. Yes.
So even you hear on like a B2, E2, J1, whatever,
you don't have a social security number. Yes.
But no, hold on. Let's talk about it. Because you can call foreigner somebody who, like, there are people who have social security, but they're on a visa, they don't have residency.
Okay.
So like they don't have the green card yet. So, but they have social security. Will that count as foreigner?
But are they here on a particular type of visa?
Yeah, they're here on a visa, or let's say they're waiting for their, like, political status. They can work, but they can work only temporary until their case is resolved. So when you say in the foreigner, is it the person who already resident with a green card, or it's enough to be just the person with a right to work and having the social security?
I know that with a foreign national, somebody that doesn't have a social, but like you said, there could be somebody that does have a social and they're paying their taxes, they're filing their income tax. There might be just in a special status waiting for their residency. So I don't know what that classification would be if they were to purchase a property, right? Because... And I'm just trying to think of examples, because there's been people that have been here on like a working visa, and they've been working here and they've been able to get traditional loans. So they might not be qualified as per se foreign nationals, because they're here to stay. They're here legally, and they're paying their income taxes on an annual basis. They're filing their tax returns and they're living here. So that may qualify them to be,
I feel like FIRPTA, it's only for people who realistically, it's only investment properties.
Yes, it's
so
only investment.
You cannot be living there.
Correct.
So realistically, people who, like the ones which I was talking about, who have social security, right, and who live here, they are, like, I have a lot of clients who they don't, like, they're still in a status, but they don't, they don't have a green card or the passport yet.
Right.
Yet they can purchase a home for themselves.
Right.
But this is not part of FERPTA because
Exactly.
they live there.
Exactly.
Anyways.
Yes.
So pretty much, so foreigners, if they purchase in their own name,
Correct.
then they have to
Have a tax withholding. So I want to touch on the key word. It's a withholding, because a lot of people think a FERPTA is a tax, and it's not. It's a withholding, so that the IRS actually keeps the money on the day of the closing to ensure that that foreigner is actually going to file their income tax return in order to then figure out what is their tax basis in order to collect the taxes, right? And so for anybody that is selling a property over $300,000 and that person that's buying is not buying it for as an owner occupant, basically there will be a 15% of the sales price withholding that will go and be sent over to the IRS. And then the following year, the seller of the property, the foreigner, will have to file a tax return in order to declare what was their gain on this particular investment, and then from that gain there's a 20% income tax that needs to be paid. So the 15% of the purchase price is usually more than enough.
20%
more
of the gain.
Exactly, more than enough to cover the basis for the taxes. And that's where, you know, it hurts, because there's a lot of foreigners that do purchase here, especially in South Florida, that are just not educated properly on how to structure their purchase from the beginning. And unfortunately, if you don't structure the purchase from the beginning, you're stuck. There's nothing you can do, because even if during your ownership you're like, oh man, let me assign it to an LLC, it's too late. Now you are bound to the FERPTA withholding. So it's really important that those bases are covered, and this is where it's important to have an agent, because usually you'll start speaking to an agent, right? And then that agent at least gives you the basic knowledge about what is FERPTA and what they will need to be dealing with when the property is ready to be sold. And so, because I run into these situations a lot, and clients they have a bad taste in their mouth after they were like, well, hold on, I had this realtor, you know, like they never mentioned anything to me. And it's not that they didn't want to mention anything to them, it's just that they didn't know any better, right?
Well, so sometimes realtors like, oh, you didn't ask, I didn't answer kind of situation. And that's where I feel like a real professional will be like, hey, let me guide you. Those are the things you might want to explore. This.
Exactly. And they may still make a decision to buy in their personal name, but at least you know that you've done your job as a professional to educate them. Right. And it was their choice, you know. They can never come back to you and say, hey, you didn't tell me this, or if I would have known this, then I would have done it a different way. But another key thing, so how to, and I want to use the word loosely, avoid, because there is no avoiding paying taxes, right? The taxes have to be paid, but there is a way to avoid having to have a withholding of 15% of your sales price. That's a lot of money to be just held for over a year in the IRS's account, you know, that cannot be used, right? They can do whatever they want with that money. So there is a way that you can structure somebody that's a foreigner, and that is incorporate a C Corp. So that is the only corporation where you can actually have or avoid the withholding, right? So that's a C Corp. But again, I always I give information on the surface to my clients, and I'm like, I can connect you with somebody that's a professional in that field. I'm going to just let you know that I know for sure C Corp is the way to go, but they can talk to you about all the other specifics of what the requirements will be on the annual filings and everything like that. So that way, that portion of the education comes from that specific professional that's going to be working with them going forward, right? And so that's another thing too that I think a lot of realtors sometimes, you know, we try to do so much and provide so much value that sometimes we try to be the jack of all trades, and that's just impossible.
Advices.
There you go. Very good. So we shouldn't be giving tax advice, right? So that's why you need to team up with a CPA.
The tax advice in this country,
no,
unless you were learned.
Yes, you're licensed, and this is your trade, right? Yep. And so that's where we as realtors, yes, we wear a lot of hats, right? So we need to know stuff, at least something on the, you know, on the base or on the surface, to have basic knowledge to educate them and have common knowledge to know, like, hey, this is outside of my scope, but I know this is the basics, and this is a great person that I work with that I can refer you to, that I highly recommend that you continue this conversation. And so that's very important, that you as a realtor create all of these outside relationships that are an aspect of your business, right? That do play an important role in your business. And so that's something that I definitely recommend that agents, when they do start, you know, ask people around, hey, who's your CPA? Who's a tax attorney that you've worked with? I mean, we have a great network, through social media and stuff like that. Like, you can get the information, but you have to have the common sense to know that these are people that I need to have in my circle.
And also to have just the common sense of understanding that sometimes, like, just to give it an opportunity that certain things might have a better solution. Just like to be open to that there might be something you don't know.
Right.
And just be able to like, hey, I don't know it.
Yeah.
Is there something better which I have to know?
And you know what? There are things that you will ask me that I'm like, you know what? I am not sure about that question. Yep. But guess what? That's something I have the resources, and I will make my phone calls and I will educate. Now it gives me the opportunity. And those are the conversations with clients, right, that we have, that I feel like I tell you, every person you meet, they're more inquisitive, so they ask more questions. And this is where you grow as a person, because there's questions, right? And there's questions that they ask that I'm like, you know what? Nobody has ever asked me this question. This is a great question. I don't have the answer for you right now, so I don't want to give you the wrong answer, but I will reach out to my resources. I will get all the details, and then I will get back to you with the answers, right? And so the moral of this whole thing is that don't try to answer a question just because you want to sound smart, or you want to sound, or you don't want to sound stupid because you didn't know the answer right there. Research it. It's okay to say, you know what, great question, I will research it and I will get back to you.
Yep. And then also, like, we evolving, like, hello, like, crypto transactions were not existing, and we all were like, oh wait, you can buy real estate with crypto. Yeah. And like the whole year we were like, oh, conferences, the confused title companies, can we do it, cannot we do it, what can we do it, what is this? Now the whole like title in the blockchain, well, hello, it's gonna happen eventually, right? So we all again, okay, well, let's take this learning curve, and
I'm gonna be honest with you, that learning curve is like, I'm not there yet.
You're like, hello, crypto. We're not. We just got used to the whole paper trail.
I know crypto has, slowed down a little bit, so I'm very happy with that, because at the rate that it was going, I was not ready for it.
You're like, I just opened the title company, the old school title company.
Exactly, and I'm like, woo! So it took a little break, and I'm very happy about that.
But we do know title companies which close out.
Absolutely, yes,
so
yes.
We can help.
And you know what? We have to embrace the change, right? I mean, the change is coming. We have to be constantly, we constantly have to be evolving, growing, learning, and then that's the beauty of it. So you have to be ready for that change. And so sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's like you're so used to doing things one way, speaking of New Yorkers and their attorneys, but it is hard to change. I'm not gonna lie.
A friend of mine came to do the real estate here after 10 years spent in New York. Yeah. And she's like, how do you fill out the contract? And I was like, what do you mean?
I would have expected you to know. You've been 10
basic.
years.
And she's like, no, we find the client and then we just transfer the client. Hand off to attorney. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
So all you do is like literally, just like showing the units and, finding things and prospecting and finding the right property. But everything when it comes to the paperwork, it's to the attorneys.
Yeah. No, I mean, we here in South Florida, I know that realtors are held to a whole other standard, right? And so realtors sometimes have a bad rep because they're just like not really understanding what they're filling out, right? And then it's very, very important that the client also understands what they're filling out. And so if I can give one word of advice, right, to people that are working in a transaction, like, if you are working with a realtor that maybe, hasn't been recommended or you don't have knowledge about, it's just somebody that you met, make sure that you ask questions. Make sure that whatever you're filling out or whatever you're signing, initialing, like, you really understand what it is that you're doing. Now, if you are working with a reputable agent, you've looked them up, you've seen their reviews, they were recommended by somebody else, like, you probably can put your guard down a little bit. But if you still review your contract, know what you're doing, but like your guard is not over here. You know what I mean? Like, definitely there's a trust factor. And so I feel like, just be smart about your money and be smart about your transaction. And also, if you're going to know very quickly if the realtor knows what they're doing or if they don't know what they're doing. Because once you start asking them questions about the contract and they're not able to answer them on the fly, there might be a problem. So,
or at least, if they have a resources and they show you, because, we still sometimes we have realtors which are new, but which are brilliant and, and they're amazing. And like, we all know that they're gonna be a superstars like in a couple of years.
Yes.
They just knew, but at the end of the day, if they have resources and desire,
yes,
to find those answers, by
absolutely.
all means, by all
but
means.
by the time you're at the point of signing a contract, even if you're a new agent, you really need to know what it is that you're filling out.
Yep.
So, maybe you need to refer back to that line to answer the question, but you'll be able to answer the question. You're not like, oh, I don't know, I just checked it off because I was told to check it off, no.
Like I just lost the contract. I mean, it was a lease, and it was just like so stupid. Like I never lost a lease over that. It's there was like the the maintenance part where you have to check either
the elective maintenance.
It's literally says either or.
Yeah.
And I had a realtor who sends me the contract with the check marks and both on all of them. And I was like, well, wait, so who's responsible?
Right.
And she's like, well, that's what my client wants. And I'm like, well, it's not necessarily what your client wants.
Right.
We're here to guide our clients
right.
what is the right way to do things.
Right.
Yes, we can negotiate who is responsible for this or who's responsible for this.
Yeah.
But we cannot just be check marking all of the boxes just because they're there.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, the contract is like my friend Cynthia always tell me, well, put a hat that that this contract goes to court.
Yeah.
How are you gonna fight for it?
Yeah.
If the check boxes, all of them are marked.
Right.
So I had to involve the broker, and the broker unfortunately gave me the same pretty much answer. That's what her clients want to do, and I was like, oh. Great.
Yeah.
So so situation like that happens. But anyway, so tell me how to choose the title company, because like right now we know that title insurance is something you really gonna pay the same amount no matter which title company you're going for. So what are some of the costs when people say, oh, but this title insurance, this title company charges me just that? So what people and agents should be looking at when they're picking the title company?
That's a good question, right? Because as I stated, the title insurance portion doesn't vary from title company to title company. However, there are other fees, and I even feel bad saying the word junk fees, but they're not junk fees, right? They're actual fees that are required in order to run the transaction, in order to pay. Yes, and then there's settlement fee. I mean, the transaction, because it is so time consuming, and again, this is the part where people don't realize how much time it takes to actually process a transaction, there needs to be a settlement fee. So the settlement fee can vary, but then sometimes you have a settlement fee that's lower with one title company, but then when you add up the other smaller fees, they actually add up to more, right? And so you have a title search that can vary a couple of dollars from one title company to another. You have the settlement fees. The recording fees are standard. The recording fees, it's not something that you can charge more. Yes, it's based on your county. Mm-hmm. And so they will collect, and if there's ever an overage for it, the client will receive the money back.
$2?
Hey, you know what? That's $2. Put it in your little piggy bank. But anyways, those are fees that, cannot be overcharged and then kept as income for the title company. So they are fully disclosed, and they do have to, and the title companies do get audited every single year. And so they
mandatory
do mandatory.
Like
mandatory. Okay. Mandatory. They do, their escrow accounts are constantly audited to ensure that, there isn't anything that's an overage that's been sitting there that hasn't been dispersed back to the client, and same thing that there isn't something that's under. So they are very much regulated, and so the escrow accounts are something very important to make sure that they're on track. But as far as other fees, there are other fee like wire fee, the courier fee, notary fee. There's other fees. So when you do compare title companies and when you do compare fees, like don't just compare, hey, how much do you charge for title insurance? Because the title insurance is going to be the same. Show me the breakdown of all of your fees and let me compare apples to apples. So if you really want to go that route and you're like every penny for you matters regardless of the service you're going to receive, and what's more important for you is saving a couple $100s, then you can request that, but make sure that you definitely look at the breakdown so that way you can compare apples to apples. That's very, very important. And so when you're also getting an estimate for closing costs, right, from a lender, the lender sometimes they will have their standard fees that are in there, which might vary depending on what title company you go with. So those fees also may not be 100% accurate when it's time for you to go do the closing. So I also recommend that if you do want to get an actual estimate of your closing costs, make sure that you cover your bases of saying, hey, this is the title company I'm going to use. These are my closing cost estimate from them. Give it to your lender so that they can plug in the actual numbers and you can get the most accurate figures. But yeah, with a title company, and they can vary, and it's really, you're going to pay for what you get for. And I recommend that, you understand what's important for you. If the customer service experience is important for you, there are some companies that are working remotely. They don't even have an office. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you want to have that personable experience, like we have in our office, we have a beautiful office. You come in, you have a beautiful conference. We give you a yummy cake, rum cake.
Everyone knows about the New World House.
Yes.
It's like, we want the cake again.
Yes. And you know what? It's a nice touch. And the cake is really yummy as well. And so we take pictures, we make it memorable. And it's something that is nice. I feel like it's a nice touch that you leave the table
that's
with.
What you remember at the end of the day. You don't remember those showings. You remember that, like
how the transaction ended. And so yeah, with the title company, it's just, make sure you're comparing apples to apples when you're comparing fees.
So now, at certain point, I had so many people who, like, developers and some investors who wanted to open the title companies.
Yeah.
Where is the money in title company? Where is it? How the title company makes money? Because it's not those like $500 settlement fees.
No. So the title company makes fees on the title premium. So the title premium that's received for the title insurance, it gets split between the underwriter and the title company, which is basically like processing the transaction. So we have the title underwriter that underwrites the file. They send us a title commitment, and it has like, hey, B1 requirements. This is what needs to be fulfilled in order for us to issue a clear policy, right? So the title company itself is the one that's responsible in making sure that the underwriter is provided with all of these requirements, or the title company is taking on the risk of saying, hey, these requirements have been completed. And so,
but by law, that fee cannot be changed.
Right.
So pretty much, it doesn't, like, even though the title insurance kind of, like, it's a split, like the premium is split, right?
Yeah.
And that's, main earnings for the title company, but realistically you cannot upcharge more.
No.
And you cannot name a different fee
Absolutely
to kind
not.
of cover for that.
Absolutely not. No,
Okay.
that is totally against the law. And I don't know how long they'll be in business for, but that is...
Less than a year, because they're going to get out of it.
Yes, exactly. So no, absolutely. No, it's a very much, like I said, regulated business. So everything, we're dealing with money, with finances. Everything has to be fully disclosed. There, you can't like upcharge for something and not disclose. And again, I've gone through the post-closing department myself. I worked there, so I understand like what happens once a transaction closes, once we issue the policy, once the recording comes back, if there's any overage, along with the copy of your owner's policy and your warranty deed, we also submit a check to the owner for the difference.
And that's what I love, that whatever you start in, you just like, let me just go, how you say, head front or whatever.
Head first.
Let me just jump in. Let me sit on this desk. Let me figure out what the girls are doing, because I want to open one of those.
Yes.
Like that I admire a lot. Like, okay, I started as a real estate agent. I figure it out. Okay, let's get a brokerage. Okay, decided to do the title company. Let me go ahead and sit down on this desk. Let me learn. Let me go to this conference, to this. I want to know every single thing. So,
and I still have a lot to learn. And that's the part that's exciting for me. It's like, although I've been in this business for such a long time, like every day I learn something new.
So did you get your mortgage license as well?
No, so I'm not.
Look at her.
No, but I did work for Countrywide. For any of you that remember Countrywide,
I don't know, but I think that was how you started the real estate.
Yeah, so exactly. So I was in Countrywide because I wanted to learn. Again, the reason why I got into it was because I was already a realtor, but I wanted to learn the aspect of the finance world. And so I said, you know what, my friend, she was a branch manager for Countrywide. She was like, hey, I'll take you under my wing, come on over. And I was a great loan officer, and I loved the business, but I knew that I wasn't in there to be my primary business. It was literally to learn every step of the lending transaction, so that when I did have a client under contract and I submitted the file, when I'm speaking to a lender, I know what questions to ask. And when they're bullshitting me or they're telling me something, I'm like, no. So been there, done that. So that was another interesting, experience that I've had, and I've been very privileged, like now talking to you about it, and like, going down memory lane and realizing like all these different things, they've all been part, related to real estate, and I've been able to experience all of them. And honestly, it's made me a much better person. It's made me more knowledgeable. It's made me a much better broker, right? And so
that's how you can share it.
Yeah.
because you experienced it.
Exactly.
So, and question about title, which I think we missed, is so when you closing, some people think that they have to like fly in here and, you know, like come to the closing table.
Yeah.
Which the last 2 years I had like maybe 4 closings.
Yeah.
With the cakes because everyone was remote.
Yeah.
So guide me through what it is remote closing, how you can close if you're not in Miami, how you can purchase.
So we have mobile notaries that will actually come to your house wherever you live. So obviously, U.S. Okay. Yes. So if you are a foreigner, it becomes a little bit more, and I don't want to say difficult, but there are a few steps that have to be followed for an approval to be obtained for what's called RON, which is remote online notarization. So although that exists, that is not necessarily an approval across the board for every single person. It's per transaction based, right?
And per country, because some countries just don't take RON. Am I correct?
No, it has nothing to do with the country. It has to do with the actual underwriter for the title company that's going to be issuing the title policy, right? Because it's the underwriter that has to approve the RON. So it is going to be based on why can the person, the seller, right, or the buyer be present for the closing? Where are they? What are their circumstances? So it really is going to be on a case-by-case basis, right? You know, we're dealing with Russia, with Ukraine, and there are transactions happening where we do need to utilize RON because obviously the people can't just leave and come over here. So those are circumstances where RON would be necessary and we would need to get the prior approval of the underwriter to allow that. And then they will require some additional requirements such as like have a witness to sign an affidavit confirming somebody local that, hey, I do know this person. This is how I know them. So it's basically an additional affidavit that needs to be signed by a person confirming that they know who they are. We've always been able to find a solution to a problem when it came to like signing somebody that's not local here. But like obviously somebody that's in the US, that's super easy. We send you a mobile notary wherever you are and we get that done. Sometimes, you know, RONs are not accepted for whatever reason. I guess, you know, the underwriter may not feel comfortable to justify the signing in RON, so they may still require a physical signature, and then they may need to go to like a US embassy in order to have the documents notarized and then therefore send those documents overnight.
But there's always a way.
There's always a way. Yeah, there's always a solution, but of course that's a very important conversation to have right in the beginning of the transaction, and that's why the seller info sheets and the buyer info sheets. Yes, those sheets are very important, you know, to be filled out, especially for those type of transactions, because ahead of time we need to know, like, are you planning to come to closing, and if not, where are you located, so we can figure out a solution from the beginning and not last minute. And we've had those situations where last minute they were like, oh no, but I assumed I can just sign, you know, electronically, and we're like, no.
And then we have to find this the next day, and then if it falls into the weekend, then the whole
so there's a lot. So that's why the communication is very important. That's why providing that information right from the beginning is important, so that everybody's on the same page and we have enough time to plan accordingly.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up, and let's talk about, just to finalize it all,
okay,
5 things any realtor who's starting, or maybe not, need to look at when they choosing the brokerage, in your opinion.
In my opinion.
You've been an agent.
My humble opinion, right? My humble opinion. So I feel like as a brand new agent, you know, you're very excited and there is like so many things and everybody wants you to be a part of their team, and that's great, right? And there are so many different solutions. So I think you need to know exactly what it is that you're looking for, because all of us are different, and what's important for you, right? And so I feel like one of the things that if I was an agent and I was starting out, what it would be important for me is to have access to either like a team lead, somebody within the office that I can constantly have access to, so that if there is a question, I don't need to look through videos to figure out what the answer is. I can call a physical person, right? And for them to be available, not like a 9 to 5, because sometimes our business is not a 9 to 5, right? And so you do need to find that if you do need a quick answer to a question, that you have the resource of who you can actually physically contact. So either a broker support where they're available all the time for you, or a team lead, right? So that's something that's important. I feel like having a open door policy as well, of where you can come and talk to your broker about anything. I think that's very important in your business, especially when you're starting out. Again, because I'm not a corporate structure. So for me, corporate is, I like went far from that. So I'm talking from my personal, guidance on what I wanted. And so broker support, open door policy. Also look at the reputation, because in the beginning, reputation of the company is going to be very important for you. Yes. So in the beginning, you are going to have to lean in on the reputation of the company or the team that you're going to join, right? And so do your research, go online, go on Zillow reviews, go on Google reviews, Google that company that you're thinking of joining to see what are other people saying about themselves. Because obviously when you come for an interview, they're going to say all great things about themselves, but look at the reviews. And I would say another thing is also look at their production. So one of the things on Zillow too, you can look up the company, right, and see like, hey, how much has this company closed in transactions, in order to figure out like, hey, do they have the knowledge, do they have the experience to be able to help me with my business, right? And so I know there's a lot of brokerages that are starting out and may have not closed a lot of deals, but they come from experience from before because they were a producing agent. So like just asking those questions like, hey, how much experience have you had? How long have you been in business, to understand, right? And I think also, is an office environment important for you? There's a lot of brokerages out there right now that are
even offices.
Without an office, and that's okay. You know what? That's their business motive, and it works for them, and I'm not knocking them for it. But if an office is important for you, if that office environment is something that you would like to have, then definitely make the time to go and visit the office. See what's what's the vibe. Is this something that's
dogs, kids, monkeys?
Right, exactly. Yeah, if you're afraid of dogs, don't come to my office. But yeah, so those would be my top 5 things for an agent to think about.
And you didn't mention anything about commission split.
Well, I mean, a commission split, of course, everybody's looking for the higher commission split. I think that comes without saying. I think if you are being provided the value that you need in the beginning, like, commission split is secondary. So, of course, you definitely want to ask about that. That's important. That's your money. But at the end of the day, if they're providing value for the commission split that they're offering you, and you feel like, hey, this is something that's going to help my business and take me to the next level and reach my goals, then I don't mind paying that commission split,
like,
but what are you
investment type of mind?
Yeah. And what are you providing for that commission split, right? And it's like, okay, well, yes, this is my commission split, and what am I getting for it in return, right? And so like as far as the value proposition, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of companies here, and a lot of different commission splits, so it's probably is an important topic to cover, but there's 100% commission companies as well, right? And it's
with
like
zero support.
With zero support, but
the money was
so zero of 100 is zero, right? And so you do have to be mindful of that. And for some people, they're like, hey, I'm totally independent, I don't need any of these services, and this is what I want to do. Hey, they're successful companies, you know what I mean? And they have agents that make it happen. However, I'm going to be honest with you, those agents, I don't see them over and over doing transactions. So they're usually like,
top one for the uncle and cousin.
Exactly. So if you are looking to be a full-time agent, I feel like having the team support, having 100%. The internal support of the office, and I think you can vouch for that as well. You are a knowledgeable agent.
I've been in a corporate company before, and for me that was when you're saying like through 9 to 5, typically you would be just referred to a video. You're like, hey, I have a question right away, it's on fire. Oh, have you been to the office meetings, or have you seen the video?
Right.
I don't need a video right now.
Right.
I need a solution.
Correct.
Like we are in, in a little situation, right, and we need a solution right now. So, and then when it happened once, twice, 3 times, I was like, okay, forget about, beyond 6 p.m. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm producing, I'm doing, like a lot of business, but obviously like I'm not getting anything, like nobody investing back on me, and like there's nobody I can just lean on. And this is, I think it's the most important, is to just understand that real estate is like kind of 24/7 business, and we still want to have family time, we still want to have vacation time, we still want to have all those things, and we have to have the team behind where we need to recharge we know that it's going to get done.
Right.
And I think that's, for me, was like the most important. And like how many times I called you in 10 p.m. like 911, Julie, what do I do? And what do I do here? And what do I do here?
And imagine you're an experienced agent.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And you still have those 911s,
100%.
right? So yeah, and those are things that I think people sometimes that are jumping into the career don't think about, right? And then they might be only talking about the commission. That's why I think commission didn't come to me at first hand as my top 5.
I just asked because it was like elephant in the room. Like, come on, you're gonna say that, oh, people don't care about commission, it's not important.
No, they do.
Like, that's what we work for. We work for money.
Yeah, we do. And when we discuss commission splits, like, you know, with our agents that come on board, and we just and we show them, we talk about the value, and then we show them. So we talk about the value, but then we also back it up and we show it. We've never had any agents come back and complain, you know,
I actually had an agent, which was our mutual friend, who said, well, you know, like, I'm still paying the split because I know I don't know the majority of the things I should be knowing.
Right.
So when she was like, I'm okay with paying it because like I keep buzzing them and, you know, and asking questions.
And she's understanding, right? Yep. Like, at the same time, you're putting your time and effort, but we're also putting our time and effort. So it has to be fair. Like, this is a team. This is not like, oh, I get more, you get less. No, it has to work for both sides in order for this to be a successful relationship. So yes, splits are important, but I feel like the other top 5 things are something you should think about first in order to understand what kind of office structure, you know, you're looking for, and what kind of support are you really looking for.
What kind of culture
you're looking for. Culture is very important. I mean, this is real estate is like a 24/7. I know we're not doctors, but we are on call 24/7, and it is a lifestyle, you know. And so you need to make sure that whoever's in your corner is having the same lifestyle as you and is treating this business as close as possible to your style as well. So that when you do need the support, you do need the help, they're going to be there, right? And the reputation, I think, is very, very, very important.
I agree. Well, let's do the 5 reasons how to choose the right title company. Like, 5 things you have to, as an agent, probably, I think the majority of the time we as agents kind of, you know, like, leading our clients, because every time when I'm asking my clients, you know, like, which type do you have the title company you want to choose, they're like, oh, what's title company,
right?
So I think it's more of like advice to the agents, like, what are 5 things you need to look at when you're choosing the title company.
Right. So as a title company, you know, again, our goal is to get the transaction to the finish line, right? But there is the customer service aspect of it. So like, if you haven't worked with a title company that perhaps your broker is recommending or somebody else is recommending, I recommend that you actually contact them via phone, go in person and see their office if that's important for you, right? If you're going to be working with a client where you want to have that client experience, and figure out, like, you know, is this the experience you want your client to have? You know, what kind of conversation are you having with them on the phone? If you're asking them for an estimate, are you getting a quick response turnaround time, right? So I would say calling the title company, getting their basic fee sheet on what it is that they charge, because they will give you that information. I would also recommend, if you haven't worked with the title company, come and pay them a visit and just say hello, so that way you can see.
Want to work with you.
Yeah, I want to work with you. I wanted to come and actually meet you in person, because, you know, on the phone it might sound one way, and then you show up to the office and it's a complete opposite, and then you're like, you're quite surprised, right? And so, because that's not what you expected, and it could go both good way or a bad way. So you definitely don't want to be surprised there. And then I would say also, like, reputation, you know, reputation also is important, because that speaks for itself. If you haven't worked with them, I would ask around. I would also Google them and see, like, hey, bad news travels very fast, right? And so if they've screwed up, believe me, it's gonna be known. People are gonna go online and they're gonna talk about it. So I definitely always recommend that we have the ability now, especially nowadays with technology, is to go online and research that title company. And and I would even utilize your social media platforms, right? If you can't find anything online about them, utilize your social media platforms. Go on your Facebook. Hey guys, you know, have you ever done business with so-and-so? And then see what kind of feedback you get.
Let me ask you a question now when I got it. So, you know, like on the realtors, you can find, like, more or less, you know, some statistic on their sales and all that. Can you find any statistics on the title company, like how much business they close, how many deals they close, or anything like that?
Not for the person individually, like, or as a realtor individually. There is no information available to the public.
So you cannot say this title company closes 200 transactions a year. This one is 1,000.
No. I mean, that's research that you can do, of course, yourself, right? You can contact that title company and say, hey, you know, I'd like to learn more information about you guys. Can you send me info about you in order for me to make a decision if it's a company that I want to align my business with? So, but there isn't any public information data points that you can go into in order to get that information.
Understood. Well, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Likewise. Thank you for having me.
We did it, guys.